Ahí va a llegar el gol del Arsenal. Ozil. Marca Mesut Ozil.
Bellerín, otro defensor, otro disparo, Monreal, gol. Marca el futbolista español, marca Nacho Monreal. Pim, pam, pum.
This is Arsecast Extra.
Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Blog. James, a very goodly, sunny, warm morning to you.
Oh, goodly, sunny, warm morning to you too. That's not what I've got over here. I've got rain and storms.
Really? Oh, well, that's shit, because I'm looking out my window here. The sky is blue. The birds are, well, they're flappy and they've got wings and shit, and they're flying around, and there's bees.
Scary.
Yeah, there's bees and other garden insects. Everyone's quite happy. It's warm here. What's happening with the world? Is it ending? Is this what it is?
I don't know. I mean, it was really sunny here yesterday. I mean, I don't understand weather. I'm not a meteorologist, but it felt like, you know, that thing where it's sort of so sunny that it turns into a storm. I think that's the science of it.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. If it gets too sunny, nature says, fuck this, I gotta rain on some bitches. That's the way it works.
Exactly. And it rained hard, and I was one of the many bitches caught in the drench.
Oh, well.
But no, look, it's fine. It's fine. You know, the plants need to drink, right?
Yeah,
they're people too.
Yeah. They've got to slurp up the rain and grow in our gardens. I apologise in advance. I've been a bit sick over the weekend, and my voice is it's a bit all over the place. It feels like it's breaking at times. You know, if I try and make a point, if I exclaim something, and I try and if I get a bit excited, chances are it'll just be like, oh my God, like that. So I do apologise in advance.
I'll try not to make anything too exciting happen on this podcast in that case to prevent that.
I don't think there is that much exciting happening, to be perfectly honest, but we'll muddle on through as best we can. There are things that we can talk about, but it just struck me before we began the podcast that we haven't spoken really since the big announcement of the Arsecast Extra Live last week, when we were all taken aback in shock at the appointment, or the announcement of the appointment, of Unai Emery. And obviously last week there was a lot of focus on the Spaniard and what he was going to do, what he was going to bring to the club, etc., etc. I mean, he got the full tour from Ivan Gazidis.
So this is our tunnel area.
I mean, that must have been the highlight of his day. I imagine Unai Emery, he went home and he said to his Mrs. Emery, he said, fuck, I mean, it's such a great club. The history, the weight of it, you can feel it. What an amazing stadium, following a man whose legacy lasted for 22 years, who created the Invincibles, who brought Thierry Henry, Patrick Vieira, Dennis Bergkamp. This is on top of a team that has already won many league titles, doubles in the past, you know, the one of the traditional great clubs of England. And you know, honestly, wife, you should see the tunnel area. It's beyond words. What this tunnel area has. It's enclosed, I guess you would say, like most tunnels. It's got walls on either side, and at the end of it there's an escape. There's a bit you can get out. It's beyond all my dreams. Yeah.
I'm surprised. I imagine that's how we convince new signings to join the club. You know, we don't actually offer them any kind of money or anything. We just give them a quick tour of the tunnel. I mean, I know we were hoping for good chemistry between Gazidis and Emery, but on his first day, he showed him his tunnel. I mean, is that a worry? Where does it go from there?
Yeah, well, look, the only way is either up or down or out the other side, as you said. So we'll have to wait and see how it goes. But in the passing of time, in the week or so that's gone since his announcement was made, how are you feeling about it? How do you feel about it in the cold light of day now that the dust has settled a bit?
Yes, and thank you for taking Mr. David Ornstein to task on his attempt to, devastate our live podcast with his announcement in the middle of it. How am I feeling? I feel really excited about it, and I think that's probably reflective of how everybody feels. I think initially there was almost a sense of shock about this appointment. But inevitably, we've all been so hungry for change that when it has come, it's kind of exhilarating. And I really enjoyed, I was at the press conference, Unai Emery's press conference, and I thought he came across really well. I thought it was a pretty masterful performance from someone, really, especially given that it was not in his first language. And I think ever since then, I felt increasingly secure about the decision that has been made. And I know it's easy to say with hindsight, but the more you think about it and the more you look at it, it does just feel like Mikel Arteta, as exciting a prospect as it was, would have been the most extraordinary gamble, and not one I'm necessarily sure it was sensible to take at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm on board with that. And like you, I'm excited. I'm curious to see what he can bring, both in terms of, the improvements he might make to what's already there and how he's going to work with what else we're going to add to the squad. And we'll certainly talk about that in a few minutes' time as well. Have you read the few little pieces that were doing the rounds at the weekend? There was one which was on Get French Football News, which they appear to have copied from the original author, who is...
it was from a PSG website originally.
No, it wasn't. It was from a guy called... I should have looked this up. Marty Perronau, I think is his name. He wrote the book about Pep Guardiola, the one who was given all the access to Pep. The guy who loves Pep. I don't know if you've read that book, but he really loves Pep. He loves everything that Pep does, and he wrote this piece on his own website, which is behind a paywall apparently, and that's where it's come from. So, but in fairness, it wasn't in English behind the paywall, so there is some kind of service being done. Nevertheless, it was a very interesting piece on Emery and what kind of a man he is and what his philosophies are in terms of football and everything else.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And I suppose one of the things you would say is, much like the author of that piece, something they have in common is a real fascination and admiration for Pep Guardiola. That's one of the things that really comes out about Emery. He talks a lot about Guardiola, but not exclusively Guardiola. He talks about Simeone as well. Yeah. And the kind of managers, the kind of football he aspires to. And one of my big takeouts from the piece, and I do recommend you try and chase it down from whatever source, I think I have retweeted it on my Twitter timeline somewhere, is he talks about the changes that he had to go through as a manager when he moved from Sevilla to PSG, the manner in which he had to adapt to being at a, in inverted commas, bigger club. Yeah. And what that made me think about was, I wonder where Arsenal sits on that scale, and to what degree the approach he adopted at Sevilla would be right or wrong for Arsenal. For example, he talks about his manner on the touchline, for example. He says, when I moved to PSG, it's a more statesman-like role. I had to kind of refine my behaviour a little bit. And he also talks about that in terms of the preparation. Like at Sevilla, I did a lot more one-to-one coaching, but at PSG, I put more responsibility on the players because they have more ability, and also there's just less time in terms of the frequency of fixtures. So it would be interesting to know to what degree he'll tailor his approach when dealing with Arsenal, because are Arsenal a PSG or Arsenal a Sevilla? Yeah, I mean, is it a case that he has got to work to some instruction at Arsenal? Like, this is the way we want you to play? Or is it a case that Arsenal are bringing him in to say, do what you can with this group of players? That's certainly an interesting thing. There was a really good piece in The Guardian as well by a guy called Marco Andreoli, who played for Sevilla. He's an Italian, I think, and he played for Sevilla. And he says, Arsenal have appointed a winner. He talks about Emery has one great quality. He is an extraordinary motivator. His speciality is preparing for matches, and he goes on to talk about the video stuff that he does. Then he says, I'm just going to read a little bit here, which I think is very interesting. He says, what's more, Emery's backroom staff was of the highest quality. His coaches are brilliantly prepared, studying for every big game. Unai and his staff are on top of every little detail. They don't leave anything to chance. They absolutely live for football. From a tactical perspective, he is perhaps better suited to Italian football than the Spanish game. On the training pitch, he works hard on defensive phases and how to counter particular opponents.
Now, obviously, when you talk about living for football, there's a comparison that can be made with Arsene Wenger in the way he approaches the game. He was the same. He absolutely lives for football, but that attention to detail, that preparation, that focus on the opponents, that focus on the defensive side of the game, that should get people quite excited, because it does seem to address some of the issues that we have had down the years, and particularly in the last number of years under Arsene Wenger, where those things were weaknesses and flaws that came to be exposed far too regularly.
That's right, yeah. I mean, there's a clear contrast there. And I suppose the other thing that's going to be different about Emery is that his focus is that bit more narrow. You know, Arsene always talked about the breadth of his role and how he was responsible for the entire football club, whereas Emery, as head coach, you would think is principally in charge of the first team squad. That's his concern, and so all that energy and all that focus can be diverted directly into that. So I really am excited about it, and it's interesting you mentioned about the backroom team. I mean, it's been about a week or so, hasn't it, since the appointment, and no news forthcoming as yet on that, but you would think they must be working on that at the moment. I know there was some talk about the goalkeeping coach potentially coming over from Paris, which I think would be a very welcome addition.
I mean, I guess he's got this assistant, this number 2 that he always works with, and I would imagine that he's probably got other staff that want to come with him. There were stories doing the rounds, how accurate they are or not, that he might have an ex-player or somebody with a connection to the club as part of his staff in order to, I guess in some ways, Arsenalify his experience, to have somebody who truly understands what the club is about. But, you know, I'm not sure how important that is. You know, I don't know that it's that important to have an ex-Arsenal player involved with the coach or with the coaching staff. You know, if you want to have somebody at executive level or a board member perhaps, or somebody who's like a liaison between the board and the manager, maybe. You know, I think we could make space for that, but I'm not sure it's necessary to inflict or to insist on somebody being part of his backroom team just because they have a history with Arsenal. Like, if this guy is as professional and if he's focused and dedicated as everyone seems to say that he is, why does he need somebody to tell him what Arsenal is about? You know, he knows what the job is. He knows it's about winning football matches. He will come to understand what Arsenal is about himself. You know, he perhaps needs to take his own view of what Arsenal is rather than have one prescribed to him, because maybe that might impact his thinking in some way. So, look, if there's a brilliant candidate out there who can come in and maybe act as a buffer or even as a translator, or somebody who can you know, deal with him while his English is improving, then great. But I don't know that that's necessary, really.
I mean, maybe it would be useful to have someone come in who, you know, has a working knowledge of the Premier League and is fluent in both Spanish and English. I mean, I know Pep Guardiola did that at Manchester City. What's Mikel Arteta up to these days? Anyone have any ideas about that?
No idea.
But as regards having someone with the knowledge of the club on the staff, I mean, are we not led to believe that Jens Lehmann's probably going to keep his job and fulfill that role potentially? Yeah,
I think so, and I don't think there's any problem with that. It depends what kind of a role he's going to have. You know, he came in as a coach/analyst, so maybe that's a prescribed role within the club that they want to keep, and they want to keep Jens in there. Steve Bold, of course, is somebody who could be involved, but, you know, my feeling is that Bold will probably want to move on, you know.
He's going to be demoted, isn't he, if he stays? Or at least, I mean, at Manchester City, they have a system where Guardiola has more than one assistant. I think he's got 3 assistant coaches, actually. So maybe they could, you know, bring in. I think it's Juan Carlos, is it? Is that Emery's assistant? It's something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe they could bring him in to work alongside Bold in a similar role to avoid publicly demoting him, but I can't see him feeling too comfortable with that, really. I'd be very surprised if he's here at the start of next season.
Yeah, Juan Carlos Carcedo is his name. So he seems a pretty intense guy, and look, from what we've read about the way that he operates, but, you know, Emery and his staff, they are absolutely going to drill the shit out of these players. They're gonna make them do things that they've never done before in terms of the way they prepare for games. You know, I'm not saying that Arsene Wenger was not serious or his preparation was not serious or anything like that, but having to deal with different methods, different ideas, different ways of preparing for a game, rather than just turn up, do the training, someone gets a nutmeg, everyone's happy, and they go home smiling. You can have a laugh in training and still be serious. Of course you can, but he's going to demand a lot from these guys. There was a good story on last week's Arsecast from Colin Miller, who's the editor of Football España, and his preparation, giving players videos. Is the guy who's at Barcelona? What's his name? Jeremy Mathieu. And, I've watched the video. Of course, great, fantastic insight. And they've given him a blank video. So, he's smart enough to know what footballers are about. And if he's going to push these guys completely and utterly out of their comfort zone, I can't begin to tell you how on board I am with that. Some of them are going to respond to it brilliantly, and some of them are not. That's just the way it's going to go. And it'll be interesting to see who gets on board, who's behind it, who learns from it, who develops under this system, and who decides this is not for them, this is too much for me, I'm going to end up somewhere else, I think, we talk about this summer being interesting, but, over the course of this season, I think next summer is going to be very interesting as well, because the manager will have a much better idea of the players he has and who's willing to work within the structures he wants.
Yeah. It feels long overdue, doesn't it, this kind of approach? And it's just really exciting to see what he will be able to do with this team. I mean, pre-season's going to be crucial for him. He's lucky that there aren't too many players away at the World Cup. Something he talks about in that interview shortly after leaving PSG is the difficulty of when you have midweek games to prepare for, just that you can't necessarily prepare in the same degree of detail that he was necessarily accustomed to in his prior jobs. And he'll have that in England. He'll have the Europa League to contend with. I mean, you couldn't forgive me if I sort of hope that he doesn't take the group stages all that seriously, because, they're nonsense, aren't they? We should progress without any real trouble.
Yeah.
But it will be really fascinating to see who blossoms under Emery and who's really willing to embrace this opportunity to try new things, to learn, to improve their game. There are so many young players at Arsenal who we've said recently have stagnated. I'm thinking about people like Hector Bellerin or Alex Iwobi, who've shown promise, but then seem to have, missed that attention to detail, that the minutiae that turns someone from a good prospect into a really good player. And Emery, I think, is someone who really could help these guys fulfill their potential if they're open to it. So I'm excited about it, and I really hope they are. And if they're not, like you say, next summer could be interesting in that respect. Yeah,
for sure. Next summer, if you're not on board, you're going elsewhere, I reckon, and that's the way it should be. So, what was I going to say to you? So, look, some of the players that we have been linked with. Sorry, there's beepy things going off here. Players that we
it's
have...
the transfer alarm.
It is. I think we've just signed a guy who's 48 years of age. No, we are going to be inevitably linked with players because the squad needs improvement. We know that. But the two players we had been linked with very strongly from a defensive point of view have been, I guess, not necessarily the most exciting signing. Stephan Lichtsteiner, who is a 34-year-old wing-back / right-back coming from Juventus on a free transfer, assuming that goes through. And then our old mate, Sokratis Papastathopoulos. I'm just going to call him Socky. That's my... that's what
Socky. Mr. Socky, yeah.
So he's coming in from Borussia Dortmund. We might touch on the Sven element of that in a little while. But what did you make of those, or what do you make of those two links in terms of A, what we need to do to our defence, and B, what we need to do elsewhere in this team ahead of next season?
Well, I mean, the news broke a few days apart, and I'm going to deal with them separately because my reaction was a little bit different in each case. As regards Lichtsteiner, I think I was immediately pretty happy with that move. I know that he's 34 years old, but it's an area of the pitch where we need cover desperately. We need someone who can fill in for Hector Bellerin and who can play games to give Bellerin the occasional opportunity to rest, God forbid. And Lichtsteiner at 34 has played a decent amount of football for Juventus this year, is extremely reliable, and it's a very It looks to me like a smart move. This is a guy who's not going to cost us anything in terms of a transfer fee. It's probably not going to be a long-term commitment. You know, you're probably looking at a 1 or 2 year deal max. And given the limited resources that we're led to believe we have this summer, it just seemed to me like a very smart, sensible solution to that problem. And I also don't mind someone with, you know, some experience, some know-how coming in. It reminded me a little bit, I know the age is different, but it reminded me a little bit of sort of the Oleg Luzhny signing. You know, signing of someone with who's a bit canny, who knows the game, who can slot in without too much trouble, but isn't going to necessarily be like a first-team starter in the long run.
Any concerns about the age? I know he's experienced. I can see all the plus sides, but any concerns that at 34 years of age, coming to the Premier League, which is very, very quick, that might be an issue?
Potentially. I mean, we've seen fullbacks before. There can be a moment, can't there, where in their mid-30s they just suddenly fall off a cliff. I always think of Gary Neville, who sort of in the course of a game basically decided he had to retire. I mean, Callum Chambers experienced something similar playing at fullback. He was about 21.
Yeah.
But I think... yes, it is an athletically challenging position, but one of Lichtsteiner's qualities, certainly, I'm going to say in recent years, has apparently been his stamina and his athleticism. And I have read a couple of people say that in that classic term that was applied to Tomasz Rosicky, in football years, he's a good deal younger than 34. But you are right. Okay. There is always that concern that a player could suddenly fall away.
Okay, so what about Saki?
Well, Sokratis, Papastathopoulos. I have been practicing. Papastathopoulos, I think.
Papastathopoulos.
I think that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Papastathopoulos.
Or Saki.
I think we should.
The reason I
think we do the man some respect and call him by his actual name. You know, Mr.
Okay,
Mr. P.
Fair enough. Mr. P. Socky P, that would be his scrap name. I tell you what, my perception of this deal was very coloured by the excellent analysis of LG Ambrose of Arseblog, who follows Arsenal and Dortmund respectively, and says that Sokratis has been a bit of a disaster in the Bundesliga. Is that? Well, I
think that's this season or last season just gone. He hasn't been great, and
but nor have many for Dortmund.
Yeah, exactly. It would be a bit like judging Arsenal players on the basis of last season too. We know that some of the players haven't played as well as they can, but we know they're better players than they've shown in the last season. I think that's the sense I get from that analysis, that previous to this, he's been a pretty reliable performer for them.
Previous to this, he has, and he's kind of, performed regularly for them at Champions League level. He's off good pedigree. You know, he was at Milan earlier in his career. He's an experienced international. He's at the peak kind of age for a centre half. I would argue, you know, that 29, 30 is often when they're at their very best. So it really does depend on if last season was the start of an inexorable decline or a bad patch for a very good player, doesn't it?
Well, 29, if we're talking about bringing in a fullback who is 34 years of age and being optimistic about his ability to cope with the lightning quick English game and everything else, the physicality of it, 29 is not old for a centre-half in any way. So I think we've got to give him some of the benefit of the doubt in that sense. He is very experienced. He's an international. You know, he's played at the highest level for Dortmund, in the Champions League. Plenty of experience in that regard. And when you look at the age profile of our central defenders, Callum Chambers is 23, Rob Holding is 22, Mavropanos is 20. You know, these are the guys perhaps that are going to be the future of the club. Shkodran Mustafi is 26, so he's somewhere in the middle. And then you've got Koscielny, who is 32 going on 33, who's not going to play anyway until he's 33 years of age. So kind of in the September, October of his career, Mertesacker is gone. We need an experienced centre-half. There's no question about it. And I do feel like the deals we're doing for these defenders, not only do they speak to our desire to hold on to money, to perhaps invest in younger talent and more expensive talent in other areas of the pitch, I also think they're realistic signings about who we are and where we are. We're a team that finished 6th 12 points off the top four, 30 odd points off the champions, right?
Yeah.
We're not, as much as we like to feel excited by a new manager and everything else, we're not the as attractive a proposition as we once were. I think we've got good players at the club. We've got lots of good attacking talent at the club. You know, you don't need me to go through the names we have from an attacking point of view. What we need is to add some experience, some profile, I guess. Guys who've been around the block a bit, who can come in. They're not going to be overawed or freaked out. You can say Sokratis, Papastathopoulos, he could be another Squillaci. Maybe he could. Or maybe he'll be a guy who comes in at 29 years of age and plays well for 2 or 3 seasons, which allows some of our younger defenders to develop and to learn, provide some cover, etc., etc. Bolsters a defensive area which needs it both in terms of its performance and also numbers. We need defensive numbers in there as well. We do have the Europa League to deal with. We're not going to go out and spend 20, 40, 50 million pounds on the greatest new central defensive talent that's out there. Whoever he is, I don't know who he is, but whoever he is, if he even exists, would not join us anyway, because he'd have his pick of clubs, because central defenders, young central defenders who are really, really talented, are thin on the ground. So you wouldn't join Arsenal. You would join any other of the big clubs in England, perhaps, or you would join one of the big clubs in Europe, because, you know, they're as desperate for good centre halves as anybody else when you look around. So I can see all the logic behind it. I just hope that the reason we are going this particular way with our defenders is because we know we're going to need to spend money on a central midfield player of some repute and quality, and also a goalkeeper. I think those the age profile of those signings will be significantly different from the 2 defensive signings we've been linked with.
I think that's absolutely right. I think this is a cheap deal, really. I mean, we're talking about, what, 16 million quid, something like that, for an international centre-half. It's that price because he's got a year left on his contract. A contract that Dortmund did try to extend earlier in the season, by the way. So however bad he was, they still wanted to keep him. He rejected that deal, and that's why we're getting him for a low price. And in this market, that is a low price for any player. You know, we'll do well to sign anyone for less money than that this summer. I think it's expedient. I think it makes sense. I think the age profile is important. We don't have a centre-half in that age bracket. We don't have... I mean, the closest we have to a centre-half in their prime is Mustafi. So, of course, we need additions. And one thing, this is just a small bit of information that I heard kind of on the grapevine, which had come from one of the guys, one of the new executive team running Arsenal, who said that this summer... this was prior to the transfer window, this is a couple of months ago, there was going to be an emphasis on signing, in their words, men. Now,
men, not boys.
Make of that what you... Men, not boys, exactly. Now, I don't know if that refers to age profile or character, but it seems that there was a kind of internal
or how much hair
drive.
they have on their back. That's the true measure
or chest,
of a man.
Yeah, exactly. I think, Sokratis looks quite hairy, actually, to be fair. So maybe that is the measure. Yeah. But I don't know exactly where that came from, but I know that was something on the agenda. And these signings maybe are an indicator that is being carried through. But I expect most of the money to go on a central midfielder this summer. That's what I think is going to happen. Me too. And you can see the sense in it. I mean, it's not particularly exciting. You know, there's nobody going to get... nobody's going to lose their shit over signing Papastathopoulos and Lichtsteiner. They're not going to be dancing in the streets on deadline day for those kind of signings. But if you're looking at the age profile of your squad and you feel it's too imbalanced, or if you're looking at your squad and you say, look, we've got some really good young players here that we want to give more time to. We've got Maitland-Niles, we've got Mavropanos, we've got Joe Willock, we've got Reece Nelson. We've got young, talented players who can make the grade here at Arsenal, but... we need to give them a bit more of a grounding. We need to give them a bit more of an opportunity, not to just be thrown in to sink or swim at Europa League level. For example, you've got to be able to mix up your Europa League group stage team with youth and experience, as Arsene Wenger tried to do
And maybe that will prove to be a benefit. You know, you can see why they're going to go for guys who've been around the block a bit, who are leaders, who've won things. You know, Lichtsteiner's coming from Juventus. Winning is a great habit. You know, it's something you like to do when you're a player. And if you're coming somewhere else, you're going to demand the players around you, get on board with that. You know, it's going to demand more of players who perhaps have been in comfort zones, as we've said. So I can see why they're going to do it. It's not particularly exciting. It's probably a bit safe, and I can understand why it's a bit safe as well, because, you know, we're going into a World Cup summer, which complicates things. As we all know, we've got a truncated transfer window closing on the 9th of August, I think it is, before the season starts. So the amount of time we have to get deals done is also particularly limited. So if they've made decisions and they've said, look, this is the way we're going to go, we're going to get these deals done, it's far better that than sitting around, 4 or 5 days till the transfer window closes and going, yes, well, you know, if we sign somebody, you'll be the first to know, et cetera, et cetera. You know, it's a different way of doing things.
It is. It absolutely is. And also, I mean, you mentioned it on Lichtsteiner there. He becomes one of the very few players in this Arsenal squad who's won a league title. You know, that, I know that's not a realistic aim for us next season, but moving forward, you know, that kind of experience, I think it's only Danny Welbeck and Petr Cech who've done it in their time, in their career. So I just think they're probably good characters to have around, and I would rather us do business effectively now, early, than wait until the last day and be panicking. I mean, just quickly, what do you think that these deals mean for our squad building, the defence? Do you think this is it? Do you think they need another centre-half on top of what we've got? Do you think they'll let anybody go, Holding or Chambers or anything like that?
Well, given Holding just got a new deal, Chambers signed a new deal, so there's obviously some... Maybe the Chambers one is a little bit different. You know, Holding got a new deal when around the time Arsene Wenger's announcement was made, something like that. It was there or thereabouts. So you've got to assume that decision was made by the Football Executive Committee. Chambers was probably given a new deal by Arsene Wenger, who wanted to keep him. You know, there was an issue with the Jack Wilshere deal. I think it was Arsene Wenger who was pushing for Jack Wilshere to sign a new deal. Whether Unai Emery wants Jack Wilshere to sign a new deal or whether that same deal is on the table for Jack, you know, we don't know. Mavropanos is new, so he's obviously a Mislintat capture. So he's one for the future. There's also the other Turkish guy whose name Kaglar Soyuncu,
something like that.
Yeah. So God, I wish we'd just signed John Smith, for fuck's sake.
I know. But we used to be the Invincibles, and now we're the Unpronounceables.
Very good. I feel like perhaps if we're interested in him, there might be a departure. It might be a case that if we're going to bring in Soyuncu, then it could be Mustafi who would raise some funds. So you could probably have a relatively cheap rebuild of your defence if you bring in Lichtsteiner on a free. You sell Mustafi for, what would you get, 20 million? Probably, given his age and profile. Somebody would pay something around that for him in the current market. That pays for the young Turkish lad. You outlay on Papastathopoulos, and that's £16 million to rebuild your entire defence or to change the structure of it. And then after that, you've got the ability to invest a bit in your midfield and goalkeepers. So we'll wait and see what happens. Yeah,
we will. Any other business before we get into part two?
Any other business? I guess Champions League final. Did you watch that?
I did watch the Champions League final. I mean, I'd had a couple of beers when I was watching. I was watching it in Spain with a load of Real Madrid fans, and I found myself really rooting for Liverpool. I have to be honest, because I just couldn't bear it. But Sergio Ramos, wow, he is something else, isn't he? That guy.
He really is a massive bastard. He really is. There's no question about it. I don't know why anybody's even surprised. He's been an absolute bastard his entire career. And, you know, there's no point getting hung up about it now. I mean, he's
got the red cards to show for it, hasn't he?
He's like 24, 25 red cards in his career. I mean, that's worse than Vinnie Jones. Probably. It's probably worse than Vinnie Jones and I don't know, Patrick Vieira put together? I couldn't tell you. You know, it's a lot of red cards. He's a very, very, very good footballer, but hugely cynical. You know, I thought the challenge on Salah was, I don't think he was actually aiming to hurt him that badly, but he knew by making that tackle there was the potential for that to happen, right?
I think it's the way he holds the arm, because you would release it naturally, do you know what I mean? But he goes, let's take him down with it. But I mean, is that there's also a little clip, I don't know if you've seen, where he elbows the goalkeeper in the head a little bit before. I mean, I don't know, I don't think that excuses what the goalkeeper did after that.
No, fairness. He reminds me a bit of Fabianski, Karius.
Right.
In the sense that, you know, he made some really good saves in that game. There was one, I think, Madrid had a goal disallowed, didn't they?
Offside, but Benzema was it, I think.
Yeah, it was offside, but, you know, in the build-up to that, he made an absolutely fantastic save from Ronaldo's header. You know, but under pressure, he just loses his reason. I mean, what he was doing with that first goal is just, I just can't even begin to explain what was going on there. The second goal, maybe he was affected by the error for the first. Do you think maybe his head was gone a bit? But yeah,
that's what Klopp said. He said he wouldn't make the second mistake if he didn't make the first one. But
maybe,
I mean, Gareth Bale can't be too happy, can he? I mean, he scored probably the greatest possible Champions League final goal, and no one's really talking about it as much after the game.
No, I mean, that's the interesting thing. It was an amazing goal, wasn't it? It was really brilliant. I mean, Zidane scored a fantastic goal in the Champions League final. Who was it against? Leverkusen,
maybe?
Yeah, Leverkusen, I think. And, you know, that was a brilliant goal, but I think the Bale one is better.
That's insane, yeah.
Yeah, truly incredible. And then scoring the goal to seal the game. You know, I hope
he doesn't go to Man U this summer, I have to be honest.
I hope he does. Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah. Yeah, he's like injury prone. He's brilliant, but injury prone. And I just can't wait for him to go and fall out with Mourinho, because that's what happens.
I would enjoy seeing what they would do with their front line. They already can't get Martial and Rashford into that team, so yeah, quite what they would do with Bale and Alexis and Lukaku and the rest. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that was it. So Champions League final, it's got to be toast for Karius, though, right? Absolutely.
Surely, yeah. There's some talk about Liverpool buying the Roma goalkeeper, isn't there? The Brazilian Alisson, I think it is.
Alisson, yeah.
But they're talking about 50 million plus potentially for him, so I can't see us being in the running for that guy.
No, I can't. I mean, we could sell them David Ospina. I think that would be
straight swap.
Yeah,
straight swap.
Yeah, that one. We give them the one from the 40 million and one. Here's David Ospina plus £1. You know, it's a bus fare or something. I don't know. All right, we'll take a break. Well, we will come back in questions. Come back in questions? No, we'll come back and do questions.
We'll come back in questions, in question form.
We'll come back in the form.
Yes, we will.
Yes, gigantic question marks. All right, we'll be back. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is the part of the show where we answer the questions you sent to us on Twitter at Gunnerblog and at Arseblog, also on the Arseblog Facebook page, facebook.com/the Arseblog. First question today is AFC Stew. He's at Gunner Stew. He says, can you answer the following? With the imminent signing of Sokratis, are we taking a more philosophical approach to transfers under the new system?
Oh, lovely.
I see what you did there.
Lovely stuff.
I see.
To be honest, I saw that question and read it and didn't get it.
It's only when it's read out loud.
It's only in the delivery.
Yeah,
exactly, because he
yeah.
spells it differently.
He does.
Oh, speaking of spelling.
Oh, yeah.
By the way. Do you remember I wrote that letter to Arsene Wenger and to him? And then yesterday, I got home and I was opening my post and I had received a very lovely response that he'd obviously arranged to be sent out to those who contacted him, which is very, very nice and very kind. Mm-hmm. But I did enjoy that the envelope that I received the letter in was addressed to Jane McNicholas.
Jane,
yeah. So thanks, Arsene.
Yeah. That's the strangest looking woman I've ever seen in my life. While we're just talking about Arsene Wenger very quickly, we had a question here it's from Saf Doe at Saf Doe or SAFDO_. He says, while seniority at the back is something we need and the players we have and the players have great experience, do you think these links talking about Papastathopoulos and Lichtsteiner would have been met with the same agreeable acceptance if Wenger was in charge? And I just wanted to sort of address that very quickly. I think we need to start looking beyond, Arsene Wenger now. In the sense that there's no point in saying what would have happened if Arsene Wenger did this, or what would happen if Arsene Wenger tried to do that, or if we lose a game, imagine the reaction if we'd lost this under Wenger, all that kind of stuff. I just don't think there's any need for it. It doesn't serve any purpose. It doesn't do anybody any good other than it just creates this false argument, this argument that doesn't need to be argued in many ways. I can see how if you look back and, Wenger decided to sign a 34-year-old and a 29-year-old off the back of a terrible season, it would have been like, boo. I mean, I get it, but there's no point in worrying about what it would have been like when Arsene Wenger was in charge. He's not in charge anymore. We've got Sven, we've got Raul, we've got Ivan, we've got Unai Emery in charge. These are the guys who are making the decisions now, and it's what they do that we should be talking about and discussing and everything else, and not this sort of straw man what it would have been like. So it's not really a criticism of the question. I just wanted to make that point because I see it around quite a lot.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And, I also think it's a little bit unfair on those incoming players because you're essentially potentially drawing parallels. You're saying, Lichtsteiner is going to be the equivalent of Sylvester or whatever it's going to be. I think we've got to try and give as many people as possible a clean slate at this point. And the club is being run in such a different way that drawing those parallels is relatively pointless at this stage.
Yeah, I agree. So now you can have a go at a real question.
A real question. Well, let's have a question that looks forward then. Where's it gone? I had it. Oh, yes, here it is. Glenn Miller, who's at _Glenn Miller. Glenn says, it's that time of year again. What are your gross/net spend predictions?
All right, I better write this down.
So we can lose it and then not remember it.
No, but I remember. I got the last two. Even our Premier League predictions and everything else, I kept that.
That was good. We were good at that.
Do you know how I did it? This was a piece of genius on my part. Obviously, I wrote it down on a piece of paper, which is, what you do. But given my office is full of bits of paper.
Nothing special about this so far.
Yeah, no. I took a picture of it with my telephonic device, my mobile device. I took a picture of it.
Very smart.
So it's always on my phone. Now, I have to scroll back about like a bazillion things because, it's just full of puppy pictures at the moment. But I will keep it. And that way we can have, at the end of the transfer window, a reference point to see which one of us was most right or most wrong. So I'm going to let you go first and I'll find a pad of paper. Hang on.
Okay. You can write it directly into your phone. That's an option as well.
Listen here. Just don't get fucking fancy now. I've got to write this down on paper first and then digitize it.
Okay, good luck with that. Okay, I'll let you find the paper. So I'll do my workings out while you're doing that. So
yep, I've got a pad here.
I suppose the way to do it is we do transfers in and then transfers out, and then we've got the gross and the net spend as a consequence, haven't we? So Lichtsteiner's coming for free. Sokratis. How much are they saying Sokratis or Sokratis is going to cost?
16 million. 16 million, yeah.
So that's 16. And then I think we're going to buy a central midfielder for, I'm going to say £30 million.
Right.
So that's 36. And then I think we'll buy a keeper
That's
for
46, by the way, if you're adding
If you are you adding it correctly? I was doing something different. I was adding it in my own way.
Yeah, your own maths.
You want to do traditional maths?
Yeah.
Normal maths?
Yeah.
We're playing normal maths rules, are we?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think so.
So, and then I'll have a goalkeeper for £13 million.
Okay.
So what does that? I'm not even going to hazard I think that's
Okay,
about 60
so
million
that's
quid.
59 million pounds is what you think
59
we're going to
million.
spend.
That's what I think we're going to spend, and I think we're going to receive. I think a couple of people are going to freeze, aren't they? Because all are potentially Wilshere. I don't think we're going to sell Aaron Ramsey. I think we're going to somehow convince him to stay or just refuse to sell him. I think we'll sell David Ospina
Right.
for
Pound.
I mean, a bag of coal or something like that. £3 million. Is that harsh?
Sorry.
I don't know.
Sorry, I'm sick. I wasn't just laughing
you're
at that.
choking at the idea someone might pay several £1 million for David Ospina.
I know, honestly. It's my
He might have a
sickness.
good World Cup.
Yeah.
And then we'll sell Carl Jenkinson for, I don't know, £2 million maybe.
No, we won't.
So that's $5 million.
No way.
You don't think we'll get £2 million
No.
for Carl Jenkinson?
No. I think Jenkinson
Well,
will
I think
go
we
out
might
for-
get. I think we'll get a bit more for Spina and a bit less for Jenkinson, but I think that's it. I think £5 million going out.
Okay.
I think that's it.
All right, well, we've got the 16 million on the table for Papastathopoulos. I reckon we're going to spend 40 million pounds on a central midfield player.
Oh.
So that takes us to 56 million pounds. And then I think we're going to spend 15 million pounds on a goalkeeper. I don't know who it is, though. Don't ask me.
I've got absolutely no idea, to be honest. No.
Yeah. So, and then I think we're going to do another little sneaky one somewhere. So,
What,
if-
like a little Mavropanos one?
Yeah, maybe a little 4 or 5 million jobby. So I've got 40 and 60 and 15 and another 4. So that takes us to, I'm just doing traditional maths here, just bear with me, as 10 and 5 is carry the 1, and then 1, 5, 75 million pounds I think we're going to spend. I think
Just
we're
out of curiosity, what position do you think that sneaky £5 million is going on?
I think it could be a forward, an attacker,
Right.
a young guy. I don't
Yeah.
know who though. I
The
don't know
new
who.
Joel Campbell.
Yeah.
You know, neither of us have got us spending £35 million on a 21-year-old Turkish centre-half, I notice.
That's very true.
I just can't see us spending that amount of money on another defender, but there you go.
Okay. I'm going to leave that 21 million on the side, but I think we could sell Danny Welbeck.
Okay.
I think we might sell Mustafi. Maybe. I'll put that in the maybe. I think we're going to sell Joel Campbell. We're going to sell Lucas Perez. You know?
I forgot Joel Campbell. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Joel Campbell kind of goes in the same bracket as the Carl Jenkinson, Ospina, thing. You're not going to get a great deal of money for Joel Campbell. You might get 7 or 8 million for Lucas Perez. So I'm saying a spend of 75, potentially 96 million if we go with the Turkish centre half. But I think we could bring in probably around 40 million in sales. That's what I think. Giving us a net spend of somewhere around 56 million pounds. Or 50 million.
Can I raise my
50 million. Go on.
Can I raise my sales figure from, it's 5 million at the moment,
Yeah.
isn't it? Can I raise it to 10?
10 million. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's my net spend?
Your net spend is, 10 million away from 59 is 49 million. Is your net spend is
So
49
both of our net
million.
spends.
Mine is 56 million-ish.
But you've got us bringing in a lot more from sales and thus spending more money.
Yeah.
Haven't you?
Yeah.
I just worry about getting offloading some of these guys. I think it's going to be tricky.
It is. But, hang on a minute. I just threw a pen and it bounced about 8 feet in the air. But, this is your fucking job now, you fuckers, right? I'm not talking to you.
To me, I was
no,
like,
I'm not
I
talking
think
to
you've
you.
misunderstood.
I'm talking to the other fuckers, right? This indecisiveness and indecision and dilly-dallying and dawdling when it comes to transfers, that's a thing of the goddamn past. These are the people that are going to come in and run things differently. They're going to be ruthless. They're going to get rid of underperforming players. They're not going to hang on to the likes of Joel Campbell and Carl Jenkinson and maybe even Lucas Perez, whose futures have been, well, maybe Perez, Spanish guy, might be a thing that Emery likes. Maybe, anyway. But even if we keep Perez, I think it could be because Danny Welbeck will go.
That's fair.
He's got 1 year left on his contract. Is he going to sign a new one? So what do you do? Is he going to want to stay and play second, third fiddle to Aubameyang and Lacazette? Don't know. Does he want to be an occasional wide player, or does he want to play at 27 years of age his football somewhere else? Play regularly as a striker, which is what he wants to do. This is why I think Welbeck could be on the way out. So yeah, look, the point is that these fuckers have got to get that stuff done. No point us sitting around here talking about it like assholes on a podcast. It's nothing to do with us. We're just guessing. It's these guys with their fancy names and their badges and their offices and their names on the office. And they probably got their name on one of those things on the front of their desk as well, just in case you forgot the name between the time you entered the door of the office and you sat down in front of the guy whose name you probably knew anyway because you've arranged a meeting with him. I'm just saying that they have all the bits and pieces. They've got all these bells and whistles. There's no point us sitting here chirping like canaries. They've got to get it done. Now, if anybody can make any sense... Exactly. If anyone
blow the whistles.
Exactly. If they can make any sense of anything I've said in the last 3 minutes, then fair play. Because I lost my train of thought there a little bit along the way.
I think we got it.
Okay.
Basically, you want someone to buy Joel Campbell for 40 million, I think is what you were saying.
Yeah. No, look, I'm just saying they have got to get the work done. There's a lot of work to get done. And, if some of the inefficiencies of the previous regime, or era, I should say, rather than regime, I think that's a better word. If some of the inefficiencies have held us back, then do they not, as a matter of freshness and newness, have to be addressed by the people who knew that these things were happening and could do nothing about them? But now they can. They can do stuff about it. And if they don't do stuff about it, well then, shame on them.
Then they've got us moaning on a podcast to deal with.
Exactly. Nobody
it's
wants
a hell
that.
of a consequence.
Nobody
There's a lot at
that.
stake.
Here's a question. It comes from Al Gilmore, who's at AJG71. And he says, is anyone, other than me, in brackets, as interested in what Emery can get out of the squad he inherited than for all the understandable fervour fans have for transfers? I want to see coaching. I want to see midfielders getting goal side when we lose possession. I want defenders protected, etc.
Etc.
Yes,
I'm really excited about it. I mean, I alluded to it in part one when I spoke about the young players who haven't kicked on, as you might expect, at Arsenal. And I think there is big potential for a lot of players to improve under Emery. And that's sort of what's really exciting about next season, isn't it? Is that, in a way, everybody in the squad is potentially like a new signing.
Yeah.
Because, we don't know how they'll respond to these new coaching methods. And I think there are certain individuals, I mean, Granit Xhaka is one who immediately springs to mind as someone who I think could really benefit from working with Emery. I don't know if you noted, but in that extensive Emery interview, he spoke about the role of a defensive midfielder and how he feels that, someone like a Busquets or even a Xabi Alonso, they do have deficiencies without the ball, but given that you have possession 70% of the time as a big team, that's a sacrifice he's prepared to make. And I was reading all this and thinking, well, Xhaka needn't worry about his place then. I think he's going to be right at the heart of our midfield under Emery, and I really look forward to seeing how he might blossom moving forward. I really look forward to seeing what he might be able to get out of Hector Bellerin.
Alex Iwobi.
Alex Iwobi is another one. Emery spoke about the pressing game and how much he, loves that. And I think when you look at Iwobi, he has the athleticism to potentially do that. I just don't think he's been I don't think he's been instructed how to do it in a disciplined way. But when you think about his performance at Stamford Bridge last season, the way he put together a really strong defensive performance as a sort of multifunctional forward in a coherent pressing formation, he could be a really useful squad player or more. So I really am encouraged by the appointment and what it might mean for the existing squad. I mean, what about the young defenders as well? Callum Chambers, Rob Holding. For the past 20 years at Arsenal, I know we don't want to look back too much. It's been such a difficult environment for young defenders. With these changes that have been made to the coaching structure of the club, could it be a friendlier environment? Could it be somewhere where young defenders can push on, can improve, can turn into the players they look like they have the potential to be?
I agree with that completely. I'm very curious to see what he gets out of some of the players, perhaps who have been written off or people have doubts about. Can he get more out of them because of his better organisation or better discipline or perhaps the way he sets up his team? And just, I think inevitably there are going to be players who thrive in a new environment, just because it's new and because it's different, and some players will really take to his methods, and as I said earlier, some won't, and we'll see where that goes. Just before you get a question off, here's one from West Antone who says, having had well publicised issues with Neymar at PSG, how do you think Unai Emery will deal with Mesut Ozil at Arsenal? Do you see any similarities between Neymar and Ozil?
I do think it's a different kettle of fish. I mean, it's interesting as well. I'm not sure issues is the right word. I don't think there was particular personal problems from what I've read between Emery and Neymar. It was just a consequence of one player having so much influence at a club that it became difficult for a manager. As he said himself, Neymar is the leader of PSG. It's not like certain clubs where the manager is the main figurehead. I'm not sure Ozil quite has that status at Arsenal, although the sheer amount of money we're paying him does kind of give him significant leeway, doesn't it?
I'm curious to see what he'll get out of Ozil and how he'll use him, and whether he plays against Newcastle at any point during his managerial tenure. I don't think Ozil is quite the same as Neymar in terms of the hangers on and the entourage or whatever, but certainly he's a guy. I think Neymar is indulged by PSG, the club, and Ozil was indulged a bit by Arsene Wenger. So that dynamic has changed.
It's one of the really interesting cases to watch, isn't it? Because when Emery talks about the intensity of the pressing he asks for from players, I actually think Ozil has the physical capacity to do that. He's a very fit guy. Does he have the will to submit himself to a system? That is the question. And to what extent is go on.
Or is the system set up to allow Ozil to not do any of that stuff, but maybe when you do have a creative genius in a way, maybe you've got to put something in place that ensures, okay, if he's not going to do all that work, and I think sometimes his defensive work is overlooked, the amount that he runs and the sprints he makes and everything else. He's not going to be the guy who's going to chase back and win balls all the time, but I do think there's a perception that he does nothing, and I don't think that's fair. But maybe if you allow him to focus more on what he needs to do in the final third, rather than say, how do we get Mesut Ozil to defend better? Maybe that's the way to go.
Yeah. I mean, and to quote that Emery, to paraphrase that Emery interview once again, he talks about how the value of a stroke of genius of any one great player can be worth more than the coaching sometimes. Ultimately, it's the guys on the field who can be decisive, and Ozil does have that capacity to be decisive. So it will be a really fascinating one to watch. And as someone who has been maybe a little bit indulged, I don't think there's any maybe about it, who has been a bit indulged by the previous regime, it will be interesting to see how he responds to the new environment. And might be one, could go either way, couldn't it? It might be one of those we talked about next summer being interesting. It might be one of those that proves to be part of that.
All right, your question.
A question.
Yeah.
Well, this is not a question. It's more a command, actually, and it's on a subject that has come up frequently over the last few months. I'm not sure how much more frequently it will come up. It's from Tiki Shaka, who is at Lassie Lays on Twitter, and Tiki Shaka says, tell us something about the Jack Wilshere situation.
He hasn't signed a new deal.
That's it. That's all we can tell him, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I have a feeling that he'll go. Yeah, that's it. I just
They're leaving it late, if not, aren't they?
Yeah.
Extremely late.
Yeah, absolutely. I just don't think it would be going on this long. If there was any kind of agreement between the player and the club, it would be done. It would be done. And I just don't see anything other than him departing on a Bosman, which I think might well be a good thing for him. It might well be a good thing for Arsenal because we've got to address our midfield issues anyway. And, you know, it's a shame that it hasn't worked out the way we all hoped it would when Jack Wilshere emerged as an amazing, precocious young talent. But that's unfortunately the way football goes sometimes. And that's as much as I can tell you. My gut feeling is that he will go.
Yeah, and it's, we know how much Jack cares about playing for England. I can't help but feel that maybe his exclusion from the World Cup squad might have sort of been the straw that broke the camel's back. I wonder if that made him think, look, if I want to be playing international football, I need to be playing more regularly than I have been at club level, and that might be a big factor for him.
Okay, here's a question from Abhishek Subramanian. I hope I got that right. He says, apart from Mavropanos, has Sven really diamond-eyed at Arsenal? I don't know what diamond-eyed is, but I can kind of guess what he means.
Diamond eyes. I guess, if you've got diamond eyes, if you had actual diamonds for eyes, you would be a terrible scout.
You would be, because the light would reflect everywhere, wouldn't it? You wouldn't be able to see anything. Like a spy, like a
Or you'd
fly's
see a
eye.
million of everything,
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know.
We should sign 1 million of that young guy who's playing at right backs. Anyway, he says almost
If
all...
that works, our scouts would all be insects. Anyway, he says what?
He says, sorry, I'm dying here.
Oh, you're just choking.
Yeah,
again,
that's
sorry.
again, yeah. He says, almost all of the players we've bought or been linked with have a Dortmund history. Of course, Aubameyang, Henrik Mkhitaryan, and Papastathopoulos.
Sure.
Yeah. So, does it feel a bit safety first to you? Is this something we should be concerned about? Did we bring in a head of recruitment just to recruit players from his old club, or should we be expecting more?
He absolutely blagged the interview, didn't he? He was just like, yeah. I know everyone in world football.
All of them.
I know that guy from Dortmund.
This
and
guy.
That guy.
I know this guy as well. He plays for Dortmund. He's great.
I can't remember. Who does he play for now? I can't. Dortmund. Yeah, it is Dortmund. Oh, yeah.
What about the guy at Dortmund? You know that guy at Dortmund? He's really good. I swear he's great. I know him.
He's got one number in his phone. It's for Dortmund.
The Borussia Dortmund front desk.
It feels a bit like we sort of wanted to hire their scout, but he wasn't the guy doing all the work. Do you know what I mean? There's a guy with no profile who's the real genius, and we've just got the guy. The guy was like, yeah, no, that was me. I found those guys. It is a bit odd, I suppose, but are we complaining that we signed Aubameyang? Are we complaining that we signed Mkhitaryan? I don't think we are, right? I think we're sort of generally very happy with those deals. Sokratis remains to be seen, doesn't it? What we get there, but that we have explained there is a kind of logic to it. I think that it's not what we imagined he would do, is it? We thought we were going to get much more Mavropanos. They thought the balance would be different. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. But look, this is
it's early though.
It's early in the summer, so I think we need to give the guy a full transfer window, obviously, to see what else he can bring in. Mavropanos is one that's apparently has got the hallmarks of Sven all over him. He's got the Sven branding. As a transfer. Aubameyang and Mkhitaryan, I think they're such experienced quality players. The fact that they were at Dortmund together was something, actually, when they signed, we were talking about it being a really good thing. We were talking about it being a great thing because they could get on the same wavelength. So I don't see any real problem with that. If Papastathopoulos can come in and be an experienced centre half, then that's fine. You know, who else is out there on this market that we know well or can be sure about? You know, perhaps there's an element of that where he knows the guy, he knows his personality, he knows his capabilities and his qualities, and says, look, this is the guy who we need right at this moment in time. You know, I can vouch for this guy, rather than just having scouting reports from different clubs and different scouts, etc., etc. You know, maybe it is a bit safety first, but maybe with defence and central defence, there's nothing wrong with being a little bit safety first. So I think it's down to what else he brings in this summer. Who else are we going to go after? Who have we targeted? Who have we identified? And who can we sign? Assuming there are going to be no more Borussia Dortmund linked players. I mean, there can't be. Surely not.
Ousmane Dembele, that's the one everyone's hoping for.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen either. You know, you don't buy a player for 100 odd million pounds or euros or whatever it is and then loan him out the next season, which is what people are talking about, Dembele being loaned to Arsenal from Barcelona. I'd be staggered if that was the case. But, you know, I think we have to give Mislintat a bit more time to see what he's about. In reality, Aubameyang and Mkhitaryan probably, not that they didn't have anything to do with him, they were probably, it probably made it a bit easier to get those deals done because he was at the club. But, you know, you don't need to be the former head of recruitment at Borussia Dortmund to know that Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is going to score you goals, right? So, or that Henrik Mkhitaryan's a really good player. So it's really about what else he does. So, you know, the first podcast after the window closes, then it's like thumbs up for Sven or thumbs down or thumbs somewhere in the middle. I don't know.
Well, and arguably even that would be too soon because we don't know how these players are going to perform. And, you know...
What, we have to wait and see how they perform?
I know it's a radical idea. It's not going to make many headlines or get many downloads, but listen, let's try it. But I think on the subject of Papastathopoulos, that's just a song.
Do you have to sing his name?
Composed it then. Yeah, always. That's the only way I can remember it. On the subject of him, I've seen people say, well, why not go for Johnny Evans? And I you know, I mean, I know Evans has been linked with us in the past, but if people are worried that Papastathopoulos had a bad season last year, at least he wasn't relegated and caught stealing a taxi drunk halfway through the relegation battle. I mean,
that's fair.
I think... Yeah, that seems fair, right? So I think we've got to wait and see how he does. I'm not that worried about Mislintat at the moment. I think we've got to judge him on what else he does in the summer. I think these deals are all about plugging holes in the squad but saving the majority of the money for central midfield. I'm absolutely certain of that. And if we don't bring in a central midfielder this summer, then, you know, I will unleash
riot.
My Sven rage. Exactly.
We will riot with pitchforks and flaming torches.
On Twitter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Speaking of songs, just you know, if the Greek guy comes in from Borussia Dortmund and starts telling us how to live our lives, we'll have to sing Papastathopoulos, Don't Preach.
I think we can just make that work.
Just about.
You know, I think we'll just squeeze that in.
Squeeze it.
But another thing to mention about that deal, the Sokratis deal, is that he shares an agent with Mavropanos. And it's an agent that Mislintat has a decent enough relationship with. And unfortunately, that is part of the practicalities of the transfer market. That we've brought Mislintat in, yes, because his eyes are made of diamonds, but also because he has extensive contacts in European football. And sometimes that helps you do a deal quicker or easier or cheaper, and I'm sure that's been a factor in what's happening here. So I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think, if anything, Arsenal have suffered a little bit in recent years from maybe not having enough strong relationships with certain agents.
That's fair enough. And a few people have wondered if the signing of Papastathopoulos has got to do something with Mavropanos as well, having a fellow Greek international or Greek player. He's not an international yet, but having somebody else at the club who perhaps could be a guiding light for a young guy who at 20 years of age has still got a lot to learn, to have somebody of the same nationality and similar background or experiences might well be a helpful thing. I don't think it's really a huge consideration. It's not like when you buy a player in Football Manager, or certainly you used to in Championship Manager, and you get homesick. You buy some guy from...
So you buy his mate.
Yeah, you buy his mate, and they're both feeling better. I don't think it works quite like that. But there we go. So, yeah.
Well, no, there is something to that just in terms of experience. We've lost Per Mertesacker from the playing staff this summer. He's not going to be out there on the training ground every day. And we know he played a really active role, in the development of Callum Chambers, in the development of Rob Holding, taking them aside, having the odd word here and there. And for Mavropanos to have a figure like that as a kind of role model is no bad thing at all.
Yeah, okay. That's fine. I was going to say something, but I've completely forgotten what it was.
Sure.
Anyway, we'll wait. That's the thing. We're giving Sven time to prove himself, which seems crazy, but we're willing to go there. Felix Davis wants to know. He's at Felix LDD on Twitter. He says, of all the players we've been linked to, who is the person you most wanted that ended up being a massive bullet dodged? I was gutted we didn't get a young Ryan Babel, and my younger brother nearly cried when Roque Santa Cruz went to Man City.
Ooh. I mean, I was gutted about Ryan Babel as well. I thought he looked very, very exciting. I was very excited about Royston Drenthe. Do you remember Royston Drenthe?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I think he went to Real Madrid and then they ended up at Reading
or Blackburn or something.
Yeah, he had a bit of a disastrous career in the end. I tell you, I know my answer to this because it was around the time, I think it was around 2004, maybe it was just after the Invincible season, not sure. And it was around the time Dennis Bergkamp was approaching the end of his career. And this guy looked as if he had all the talent necessary to be a successor. And he ended up going to Liverpool, and that was Harry Kewell. And I was certain that Harry Kewell was going to be an absolute star for Arsenal. And it was so close to getting over the line. And as we know, he never quite took off at Liverpool, and his career never really panned out to be what we thought it might be. So, yeah that's my answer, Harry Kewell. Were you excited about Harry Kewell?
No, I remember it being announced that it was a done deal. Arsenal sign Harry Kewell. I can't remember one that got away, but I think one that strikes me is I remember being so keen for us to sign. Actually, it came to pass later. Julio Baptista. When he was playing,
a great one as well.
When he was playing for Sevilla, we were really linked with him in a big way, and I remember thinking, "Oh, this guy looks the absolute fucking business." I really want to. I mean, we did we not have like years ago on the Arseblog forum a big, huge Beast Watch thing? It was like everybody was into the signing of Julio Baptista. It didn't happen, and then he went to Real Madrid, and eventually came to us on loan. And it was like...
a year later, yeah.
Oh, my God. Oh, why?
It was extraordinary, wasn't it? I think it was the summer that we sold Patrick Vieira, was it? 2005. And Baptista was earmarked as a kind of alternative replacement.
It was 2006, I think. It was the summer we brought in Gallas. We did the swap deal with Ashley Cole. We also... Did we not sign Danielson?
I think that's when he actually arrived, isn't it? 2006.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was 2005 that we were trying to buy him, and he went to Madrid.
Yeah. Sorry.
And and Vieira went to Juve, and he was going to restructure the midfield and turn Baptista into this box-to-box beast. And then we swapped him for Reyes. Reyes went on loan to Madrid for a season, didn't he? And won the league over there.
Yeah.
With Real before ultimately signing for Atletico. But yeah, I mean, he scored 4 goals at Anfield, and to be honest, that's all we really remember him for. But
didn't he say something about the only pure goal is an overhead kick or something like that?
I mean, you have to admire that.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was. There was some quote from him about overhead kicks, which I remember thinking was quite amusing, because he did try a couple when he was with us. And
he tried it all the time, yeah.
They didn't...
Rarely work.
They didn't really work out. They did not really work out. But yeah, I think that's the one that strikes me.
That was That's a great one, because not only were we excited about it, but we then later got to see our folly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The proof was, the pudding was eventually produced.
Yes. All right, have you got one more or not?
I'm not sure if... I tell you what, I do actually. I don't know if you've been following this story. Gunner Pride, at Gunner_Pride, is not happy. Gunner Pride says, Arsenal reportedly failed with a late bid for Fabinho after the news emerged about Liverpool. If we really wanted him, why did it take interest from Liverpool to make us act? I feel similarly to you about this one.
No way. I just don't believe that for 1 second. Liverpool got that deal done... under the radar. They didn't just do it when in the wake of the Champions League final. They didn't say, we better make everyone feel better, we'll go out and buy Fabinho.
They're going to play him in goal, I think.
Fucking wouldn't blame them. But, no, I don't think so. I don't think there's anything in that at all about Arsenal. No, I don't buy it.
Just an easy way to generate interest, isn't it? Mention Arsenal.
It sure is. I've got a couple of quick ones to finish.
Go on then.
All right, here is... All right, I've lost it, James. I've lost it.
These aren't the quickest of quick. What? Do you remember them vaguely? And you can just sort of ask me some questions.
Jonathan Baxter says, does Emery look like a Velcro or a zipper kind of a guy? Because that is the issue we need to figure out about our new manager.
It's a new regime. It's got to be Velcro from here forward, I think.
What's wrong with buttons?
That's true, actually. Bring back buttons.
Buttons.
Play good old Arsenal as the teams run out.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's what we need to do. And the final one then comes from Sana Jamie, who's at Sana Jamie, and he says, would you rather eat a handful of hair or lick 3 public telephones?
Oh my God. I mean, there's a public phone box near me.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure anyone uses it anymore because it's, got, unless they're spies or something, because, we all have mobiles. But the stench, it's like a portal. Have you seen, when you go in there, it's like going into the Upside Down. It is unbelievable in there.
Really?
I'm going to eat the hair. I mean, I'm not happy about it, though. Whose hair is it?
I don't know. I don't know whether it's dog hair or human hair. Like
it's my own hair, right? I guess.
You don't have enough to eat a handful.
Listen, I don't have enough taste buds to be licking phones. I mean,
yeah.
What would you do?
I think I'd go with the public telephones. Just the idea of
the hair would really get stuck in the throat.
I just would not be able to do that.
But
and
I think at the moment,
you see, the thing is, public telephones are so far or so rare these days that you would be able to say, go on a nice day out, go on a nice hike or walk. So you could, find one public telephone. Then by the time you've found another public telephone, you'll have washed away the initial, lick of the telephone, and that'd be fine. I'd rather do that than eat hair.
I'm going to stick with the hair, but I'm between the devil and the deep blue sea here, guys. It's not an easy one.
No, definitely not. Anyway, as ever, we answer the big questions.
I suppose that was the idea.
Yeah.
Good question.
All right, well, look, we will be back next Monday with another Arsecast Extra. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Friday yet, whether anything will happen to merit a podcast, but if it does, I'll be here. We'll get something together for you. Thank you as ever for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.